Star Trek has a surprising 20-year gap with no Enterprise. For nearly 6 decades, Star Trek has boldly gone where no franchise has gone before, from the original USS Enterprise to the Next Generation and beyond. Yet, when you look closely at the sprawling timeline of Star Trek, there's a surprising 20-year period when one of the most iconic starships in science fiction, the Enterprise, was completely absent from the galaxy. For a franchise that has practically made the name Enterprise synonymous with Star Trek itself, that absence is both shocking and telling of how the saga has evolved over time. This hidden void reveals much about the creative direction of the franchise, the Federation's political state, and how Star Trek's relationship with its own legacy has shifted. The Enterprise has always represented humanity's best: exploration, diplomacy, and perseverance. So when Starfleet's flagship disappears from active duty for 2 decades, it raises the question: what happened to the beating heart of Star Trek? The end of the Enterprise E, Nemesis, and the fallout. The last time we saw an Enterprise before this gap was the USS Enterprise E, commanded by Captain Jean-Luc Picard in Star Trek Nemesis 2002. The Sovereign-class vessel was sleek, powerful, and perfectly suited to the more action-oriented tone of the Next Generation movies. By the end of Nemesis, the Enterprise E had survived another galactic crisis, but not without losses. Data's sacrifice, the destruction of Shin's Scimitar, and a shaken Federation left the crew and ship deeply scarred. But after Nemesis, the Enterprise E simply vanished from Star Trek continuity. Later shows like Star Trek Picard said decades after Nemesis confirmed that the ship was retired, though the details are humorously brushed off in Season 3, or when Worf cryptically says, "That was not my fault," refusing to explain what exactly happened to the E. That offhand joke hides a major fact. After the Enterprise E was decommissioned, there wasn't a replacement for 2 full decades. The Enterprise F wouldn't launch until the early 2500s, long after Picard's days on the bridge were over, a 2-decade void in the Federation's flagship legacy. For most of Star Trek's in-universe history, the Enterprise lineage has been almost continuous. The original Enterprise NCC 1701 passed its name to the refit, then to the Enterprise A, B, C, and D, with only short gaps in between. But the span between the Enterprise E's retirement and the Enterprise F's debut marks the longest break in the ship's service history. In universe, this 20-year absence happens at a pivotal moment. The Federation faced multiple existential crises: the Romulan supernova, the attack on Mars that crippled Starfleet's shipbuilding, and the growing isolationism that defined the 25th century. Starfleet itself became more insular, abandoning the spirit of exploration that the Enterprise symbolized. Without its flagship, the Federation literally lost its flagship ideals. It's no coincidence that when the Enterprise F finally launched, it was during a time of renewed tension and political upheaval, almost as if Starfleet was trying to remind itself what it used to stand for. Behind the scenes, why Star Trek moved away from the Enterprise. From a real-world perspective, this 20-year Enterprise drought reflects how Star Trek's storytelling focus changed after Nemesis. For decades, every major Star Trek series centered on an Enterprise. The original series, The Next Generation, and even Enterprise, the prequel starring Scott Bakula. But when the franchise was revived with Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard, the creative teams deliberately moved away from the Enterprise to explore new corners of the universe. The idea was to evolve Star Trek beyond one ship, to tell stories that didn't depend on nostalgia for Kirk or Picard's vessel. Discovery introduced the USS Discovery and later the Discovery A. Picard focused on retired Starfleet heroes, and Lower Decks followed Second Contact ship, the USS Cerritos. For the first time, Star Trek existed in a post-Enterprise era. It was a bold experiment. Without the Enterprise, the franchise had to prove that Star Trek's heart wasn't tied to one starship, but to the ideals that ship represented. The return of the Enterprise F, a symbol of renewal. When the Enterprise F finally appeared in Star Trek Picard Season 3, it wasn't just fan service, it was a narrative correction. Starfleet needed the Enterprise back as a symbol of hope, unity, and resilience. Even though the F only appeared briefly before being retired, its presence marked the end of the Enterprise drought and the rekindling of a proud tradition. The F's sleek Odyssey-class design was lifted from Star Trek Online, itself a nod to how fan contributions kept the Enterprise legacy alive during those missing years. And with the Enterprise G taking flight under Captain 7 of 9 at the end of Picard Season 3, the ship's legacy has never felt more revitalized. Seven's Enterprise is not just another Federation flagship, it's the literal bridge between the old guard and the new generation of Star Trek. After 2 decades of silence, the Enterprise once again led Starfleet into the stars. What the gap really means for Star Trek